Fear will best you!
Hello guys, it's me again, back with another off-meta build. But wait, isn't Shattering Palm already a meta build? Well, yes it is, but this build is different. This is my budget-friendly version. And yes, you're still going to need around 20 to 30 divines, but that's still much cheaper than most of the Shattering Palm builds you see online. This build is for newer players who don't know how to farm hundreds of divines every hour, or players who simply can't afford expensive weapons, expensive jewels, and expensive lineage supports. This build doesn't use Rakiata's flow, it doesn't use Garukhan's resolve, it doesn't use mirror worth critical weapon, it doesn't use crit jewels worth 20 to 30 divines each, and most importantly, this isn't a martial artist. This isn't one of those clickbait videos where I tell you it's a budget build, then halfway through I suddenly swap to Rakiata's flow, Garukhan's resolve, or a mirror tier weapon. This is the actual build from start to finish. Now, if you want to use this build to farm currency and eventually upgrade into one of those expensive versions, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And before anyone says, with 20 divines I can make a stronger build, yes, you're probably right, but that's not the point of this video. This guide is specifically for players who want to play Shattering Palm but don't have the currency to build the expensive meta version. So with that out of the way, let's get started. For this build, I'm using the Warbringer Ascendancy because of its armor-breaking mechanics, specifically the anvil's weight and imploding impacts. Let's start with the anvil's weight. It says break armor equal to 10% of hit damage dealt. So the next question is, what exactly counts as a hit? In Path of Exile 2, any damage that isn't damage over time is considered a hit. That means both attacks and spells can trigger this effect as long as they're actually hitting the enemy. So yes, even spells can also break armor with Anvil's weight. Now you might be thinking, isn't armor only supposed to reduce physical damage and Shattering Palm this called damage? Normally yes, that's where the imploding impact comes in. It says, fully broken armor you inflict increases all damage taken from hits instead. Notice that it doesn't say physical damage anymore, it says all damage taken from hits. That means once you've fully broken an enemy's armor, every hit benefits from it, including the cold damage from Shattering Palm. And on top of that, imploding impacts also lets us push armor below 0, giving us a little more damage after the armor is fully broken. For my remaining ascendancy points, I took Jade Heritage and War Colors below. So how does this build actually work? When you use Shattering Palm, nearby enemies become coated in ice shards. If those enemies take a strong enough hit, those shards explode. Most Shattering Palm builds are played as great martial artists because they synergize really well with Hollow Focus and Hollow Resonance. Whenever they land critical hits or hit the bell created by Hollow Focus, they trigger additional hits that detonate those ice shards. Our build works a little different. Instead of relying on crits, we're relying on Armour Explosion support. Because we're constantly breaking armor through Warbringer and several armor break modes on the passive tree, we're also constantly triggering Armour Explosion. Those explosions count as hits, which means they can hit the ice shards from the Shattering Palm and detonate them. So instead of using crits to trigger the chain reaction, we're using armor breaking. Now here's where things get even more interesting. We're also using armor explosion support with Herald of Ice. Because of Anvil's weight, Herald of Ice's explosions can also break armor. And when those hits fully break an enemy's armor, they trigger armor explosion again. Those explosions can then shatter more enemies, which triggers more Herald of Ice explosions, which can break more armor and trigger even more armor explosions. That's how you end up with those satisfying chain explosions that can clear an entire pack almost instantly. Now you might be wondering, how are we dealing enough hit damage to keep fully breaking armor? Because after all, we're not using Rakiata's flow and we're not playing a crit build. So where does the damage come from? The answer is actually pretty simple. I bought several chip jewels with elemental damage or cold damage along with cold penetration. These jewels are surprisingly cheap because most players are looking for crit jewels instead. And since we have 200 spirit, thanks to the Alpha's Howl helmet, we're also running Blasphemy linked to elemental weakness. That means nearby enemies constantly have their elemental resistances reduced, while our cold penetration helps us ignore even more of their cold resistance. The goal isn't to invert resistances like Rakiata's flow does. Instead, we're trying to reduce their effective cold resistance as much as possible so every hit deals enough damage to consistently break their armor. Once that armor is broken, imploding impacts takes over, increasing the damage they take from all of our hits. That's what keeps the explosions going. Before we move on to the gear, I just want to ask a small favor. If you're enjoying the video so far, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a like and subscribe to the channel. When I first started making Path of Exile 2 content, I only had 49 subscribers and most of my old videos were getting around 10 to 50 views. Now, as I'm recording this video, I've reached 87 subscribers and some of my recent PoE2 videos have already reached hundreds and even thousands of views. I honestly didn't expect that, so thank you to everyone who's been watching and supporting the channel. It really means a lot. I keep making more builds like this, so if that's the kind of content you enjoy, consider subscribing. Now let's talk about the gear. For this build, I decided to go with the full runic ward setup. The reason for that is pretty simple. By stacking runic ward on my gear, I don't have to spend passive points on defenses. That lets me invest almost everything into offense instead. And let's start with the helmet. I'm using the Alpha Soul, and honestly, it wasn't expensive at all. I bought mine for only 3 Chaos Orbs. Just make sure you buy an uncorrupted one. That way you can take it to the Veratium Anvil, craft runic ward onto it, and then use an Artificer's Orb to add the socket and then corrupt it afterward. If you're lucky, you'll get another socket or useful corruption just like I did. The next is the brass dome. This is definitely the most expensive item in my build. Try to get as much as possible, try to get the -1 to all maximum elemental resistances instead of the -5, and try to get as much maximum runic ward. And for the amulet, you don't actually need the one I'm using because the elemental conflux is completely optional because the bonus elemental damage is random anyway. Instead, you can buy a much cheaper amulet with plus 2 melee skills and at least 25 spirit then use a level 14 Eternal Rage. You'll get very similar performance for a fraction of the cost. And for my gloves, I crafted them myself. I bought a cheap pair with +2 to melee skills, attack speed, and an open prefix, then crafted the rest from there. And then for my boots, which cost me only around 40 exots, the important thing is getting cryptic leggings since they can roll a high amount of runic ward after crafting them in the Veritium anvil. I just look for movement speed and some resistances, and that was enough. And for my belt, I got this for around 90x. My rings are trash. They don't even have great flat damage rolls. All I really did was increase their quality. So if your rings are better than mine, you'll probably end up doing even more damage than I am. And finally, let's talk about the weapon. Look at my quarterstaff. The DPS isn't even that high. And honestly, you could probably buy a better one for around 1 divine. So if you don't feel like crafting or gambling, just buy one. But if you want to know how I got mine, here's what I did. Since I've been farming Ritual and I highly recommend Ritual for this build, I've accumulated a lot of Omens of Gambling. If you don't know what it does, here's the description. While this item is active in your inventory, your next gamble purchase will have a 50% chance of costing no gold and not consuming this omen. So what I did was I keep buying quarterstaffs from Ange and use the omen to gamble on them until I finally hit a good base. Eventually, I got one with increased physical damage and +40 melee skills. From there, I used an Essence of Abrasion to get the flat physical damage. Then I used Desecration and managed to hit the trash 7% increase attack speed. The rest of the modifiers were just added with greater exots. So don't expect to get a great weapon after only a few attempts. It's called gambling for a reason, of course. Sometimes you get lucky and sometimes you don't. Now let's talk about how I farm currency with this build. I highly recommend farming ritual. Specifically, I like farming rituals inside cities where you can place 4 tablets. For the first 3 tablet slots, I use rare tablets with the modifiers like favors in maps have increased chance to be omens, revive monsters have an increased chance to be rare. For the fourth slot, I use the unique ritual tablet, Freedom of Fate. This build feels amazing for ritual because they're fighting inside a small circle. Enemies are packed tightly together, which makes it incredibly easy to chain Shattering Palm, Herald of Ice, and Armour Explosion across the entire encounter. The screen just keeps exploding, and the best part is the profit. At the time I'm recording this video, Omens are selling really well. Omens of Whittling are selling for around 13 divines each, and Omens of Sinistral Annulment are selling for around 17 to 18 divines each. So not only is Ritual one of the most enjoyable mechanics to farm with this build, it's also one of the best ways to earn currency so you can continue upgrading your character. And for the extra damage and extra clear while doing rituals, I'm using Infernal Cry just for the corpse explosion. From time to time, I'm using the Infernal Cry to explode the corpses of the enemies that were not shattered by the Shattering Palm and Herald of Ice. And that's pretty much it for the build. I leave the Mobalytics link down in the video description if you want to import the build or take a closer look at everything. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment below and I'll do my best to answer them. Once again, thank you so much for watching and for supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one.